One of the most shocking hires in the recent history of college football, where coaching searches also often follow private planes being tracked and will he, won't he jump from this spot to another. DRS, the new head coach of North Carolina Tar Heels football in Chapel Hill, is Bill Belichick. That is not a joke. It is not an Onion headline. It is a legitimate story and now an official hire. Bill Belichick will be the next head football coach at the University of North Carolina. The 72-year-old Belichick, who has won the most Super Bowls as a head coach in the history of the National Football League, 6 Lombardi trophies to be exact, is now going to coach in college for the first time ever. Never even worked as an assistant or anything in the collegiate ranks up until this past season, DRS, when he parted ways with New England at the end of 2023. He had been working in some capacity in the NFL since 1975. And now, for the first time ever, at 72 years old, Bill Belichick is headed back to school.
Wild. It is a wild turnaround to one of the best coaches we've ever seen in any professional sport in North American history. Basically, gets shunned by the NFL last year interviewing for teams, didn't get any jobs. You figured he'd just sit out, pick whatever job he wanted to come back to the NFL. And then we got that glimpse of Bill Belichick just interviewed for North Carolina. He's just trying to practice like what I'm going to get back on this level, but I just want to see like what college is doing. Then eventually I'll just go back to the pros. And here we are accepting a job with UNC. Here's the question that I'm going to have. In professional sports, you have contracts, Ben, right? And the Patriot way, and we heard about it so many times, the things I get a big kick out of are like the teams like the Green Bay Packers and the New England Patriots always told you, don't do anything in free agency. It's a waste of time. Just win through the draft. Well, you get Tom Brady, you can make 15,000 errors in the draft and free agency. It doesn't matter. He covers it up. And for so many times, the Green Bay Packers just saying, we're not going to spend any money in free agency because we have Aaron Rodgers. The reason I bring that up is for the Patriots, if you draft a player, you basically have them, Ben, first round picks for 5 years, second round picks and on for like 4 years at that point, where you are forced to buy in to the Patriot way, whether you like it or not. My way or the highway. You don't want to play, I'll just sit you on the bench until you eventually want to quit football. You can't do that at the college football landscape. And also the Patriot way, a lot of was, yes, you're going to learn how to win and how to be a New England Patriot, but also you know what you're going to do? Not have any fun doing it. And it's going to be a job. It's not fun out here. We're going to win, and winning is not fun. We've heard that in so many football movies in the past. So how does he translate from being a curmudgeon in the NFL, my way or the highway, go to college with 18-year-olds that show up on campus day 3 and go, this isn't for me. I'm just going to transfer out. See you guys later. Peace on this one here. That's what I'm most interested in, because if it works, you could look at the changing of the landscape officially from professional football to college football and changing that mindset. If it doesn't work, it feels like the Deshaun Watson contract in the NFL. Nobody's going to go down this path ever again in NCAA. Because look, if Bill could make it work, none of you old timers can make it work.
And speaking of that contract, it is reportedly a 5-year, $50 million deal. UNC is backing up this with the investment necessary to allow the NIL funding and the resources for Bill Belichick to have success, not 3 to 5 years down the line, but right here, right now. He replaces the oldest head coach in FBS college football, Mack Brown, who was in Chapel Hill for 6 years, and becomes the oldest head coach in FBS college football. He is 72 right now. He will be 73 before his first season at the helm at UNC. DRS, we have so much more to discuss. We are pretty much going to spend the next 25 minutes on Bill Belichick. You want some other stuff? It will come later on in our second hour, because there are so many different layers to this story. There are so many different pieces of this puzzle to dissect. One that I will start with is organizational control. It's one of the reasons that I believe, and as has been widely reported, that Bill Belichick is not a head coach in Atlanta right now, or his prospects perhaps of coaching once again in the NFL seemed as though they were slim to none, leading to sincere interest in being a head coach in North Carolina in college football. Because you mentioned the NFL professional model, now in CFB. That, in its essence, is not revolutionary. That is what is necessary now in college football. And we'll talk about the structure, Bill Belichick's succession plan in Chapel Hill, all of that and plenty more up next on the Early Line. There are so many takeaways to discuss after Bill Belichick has officially been named the new head football coach at North Carolina. From 1975 until the end of his previous NFL season in 2023, Belichick had held a coaching role of some sort in the National Football League. He has never worked a single day in collegiate football. His father, Steve, was an assistant coach at UNC from 1953 to 55. His son, Steve, is more than likely going to be his defensive coordinator and his successor in 2027, 2028, whatever it might be, as the next football coach at North Carolina. DRS, as the reporting was let out in this process that seemed as though it was a joke at the start and within a week became very real and then official, it was Bill Belichick issuing out his organizational Bible, 400 pages of what he needed, what was a necessity for him to consider actually being the head football coach at North Carolina. And UNC's Board of Trustees and the guys responsible for making this decision gave him everything that he needed. His old pal from their days together in New England, Michael Lombardi, will act as his general manager. Steve Belichick, his son, more than likely going to help him fill out his staff as well. The younger Belichick is currently working as the defensive coordinator at Washington, where he has spent this past season under Jed Fish. Donnie, you mentioned this. Are we seeing a revolution in college football to reflect that NFL professional type model? A lot of people have asked, how will Bill Belichick relate to college kids? How will he recruit? Is he going to hit the road and enter a 16-year-old's living room and say, hey, come play for me? Probably not. He is trying to set up his institution to do those things for him, to operate like a professional model, which is what he did in New England. He wasn't just the head coach responsible for the game plan and the X's and O's. He was the front office exec. He held full power with the Patriots. It's one of the reasons I don't think anybody wanted to give him that elsewhere around the National Football League. It seems as though he will have that in Chapel Hill.
Yeah, and I'm surprised he actually didn't just go to the SEC and go full blast Bill, because the one thing we understand is college football coaches, same thing with college baseball coaches, college basketball coaches. You got to cross the line at times if you want that good player. You got to say to yourself, you know what? If I go by the book, this kid's probably going to another institution. Oh, I'm not supposed to pick up the phone call on this day and call him. Maybe I'll get one of my assistants to do that. Oh, I'm not supposed to have an in-house visit. Let's keep this on the hush-hush. Oh, I was just in town stopping by. Let me talk to your son here to see if he wants to be a part of the North Carolina football team. Because we saw it in the pros. Taping every single practice you can before Super Bowls, inside the game, breaking down signals at halftime of the Philadelphia Eagles Super Bowl and saying, oh, we know every screen pass you have coming now. So Bill will walk that line, which is acceptable in college football. But the interesting thing is going to be, you're right, Ben. Usually when you hire a head coach in college football, yes, it is about X's and O's, but usually those guys are rock star salesmen, which means that guy shows up into your living room and you have 6 offers on the table from other schools. He walks away with a signed signature with a pen and paper that said, that kid's coming to my school, with the enthusiasm and also the panache to say, you know what? I relate to young kids. Yes, Bill Belichick has won multiple Super Bowls. He's coached Tom Brady. He's going to walk into any kid's living room now and have that. But is it, I'm Bill Belichick, my staff's going to bring the kids to me, and then I'll eventually talk to them? We'll see how that goes, because the excitement will be there. They're going to get players, but as I talked about before, the pro game and the college game is so much different. You know where I thought Bill Belichick would have been perfect? Because the one thing we understand with Bill, he's a football lifer, and he loves the game. I thought if he did not coach NFL football, he'd go right to the high school ranks, you know, kids 15, 16, 17, mold them for their careers, coach them well, send them off to college, and away you go. Or he would have just taken over for one of the institutions like, you know, Air Force, one of the military academies, Army or Navy, because of that discipline he instilled with the Patriot way. They're not getting transfers in and out. Once you show up as a freshman, I know I got you from 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, and away you go off into your life. I want to see that transition being made, because he is running this like a pro game in the college system, which once again, Ben, could revolutionize what we see. Or, do you remember when they tried to hire Belichick at Carolina? Boy, that was a disaster.
So, DRS, what you are saying, revolutionize this system.
Yeah.
I would agree in essence. However, that revolution is already happening. We are seeing big-time college football programs invest in general manager-type positions to organize and facilitate both high school recruiting, NIL funding and resources, and, of course, with an eye on the transfer portal. College football has been a professional model for the last 3+ years since NIL became a legal thing in the summer of 2021. Some have been more on the cutting edge. Some have embraced this change more than others, but that has already been happening and already is happening and must. And there is an idea that because of NIL in the transfer portal era, that Bill Belichick, it doesn't really matter if he relates to college kids. Kids come in, kids come out. They will figure it out in this professional style model. That's still not, in essence, college football. You still need to create that buzzword that is culture. Bill Belichick doesn't necessarily have the panache of even, say, a Deion Sanders, who was revolutionary in the way that he attacked rebuilding a Colorado football program. It has worked into year number 2 of that prime era in Boulder to an extent. And what will success then be, DRS, for Bill Belichick? Because let's talk legacy here for a second. Nobody has won more Super Bowls as a head coach than Bill, 6. Nobody has played in more Super Bowls than Bill, 9. Only one guy has more wins as a head coach in the history of the NFL. That's Miami's Don Shula, 347. Bill only 14 wins shy of that in his career, 333. So let's look at year number 1. In the already odds expectation for the Tar Heels in Chapel Hill in 2025. 7.5 is the win total. It opened at 6.5, by the way. It is already 7.5. The under has the juice. And he is not taking over a program like Deion Sanders took over in Boulder that had just a single win the year before. You can argue Pantheon in ceiling for North Carolina, who has not won an ACC football championship since 1980, nearly 4.5 decades ago. But, Donnie, they've been a consistently successful football organization. They reached a bowl game in all 6 years under Mac Brown. They've won at least 8 games, 6 of the last 10 years. I wonder what success would be in the mind of Belichick, would be in the eyes of the college football landscape, would be for those trustees in Chapel Hill to make all of this investment worth it for North Carolina football. What say Donnie Rightside?
Yeah, you know what's the interesting part about this too, Ben, is you look, this was a calculated decision from Bill Belichick. He chose a basketball school with unlimited funds that has never reached the pinnacle. Also getting in the time here of college football where the story of a successful program used to be you got to get into the championship game, which is 2 teams. You got to get into the college football playoff, which was 4 teams. Now the expansion to 12. If he can go over the next couple of years and even make one playoff run with the expansion, it will be deemed a success here. You also notice he didn't go to like a Texas, and I'm saying Texas job was open. Just, the Blue Bloods, the Texas is the Ohio States of the world. This is a perfect calculated risk, and coaches do that. Do you remember Urban Meyer took the Florida job? Florida wasn't a necessarily unbelievable job where they were winning left and right at the time he took over. And nobody said, hey, I don't want to get in Spurrier's shadow. Took them after Ron Zook, a little bit of a down program, then goes up north and says, you know what, Ohio State's down for you. Let me take that job. Worked out in spades. Then he tried to level up in the pros and go, Jacksonville's the perfect spot. Number 1 draft pick. I'll walk right in there to a downtrodden franchise and win. And it didn't work there. That's what I'm most interested to see with Belichick because he is one of the smartest men on the planet. This was not, I talked to 50 schools in Carolina I finally settled on. He picked Carolina out, and that was the only time he interviewed. This was calculated, so we'll see what he has to offer now.
There is no doubt about that. Donnie and I on the other side of the break will give our final assessment. Will Chapel Bill work in Chapel Hill? We'll decide up next. All right, so on this Thursday on the early line, we have pretty much broken down the big news of the day yesterday in sports, the shocking development that became an actual reality. Bill Belichick, the new head coach of North Carolina football. We've given you all the angles of why it could work, why it might not. DRS, I'll start with what I think is going to happen in Chapel Hill. I'm a little bit skeptical that Bill Belichick's model, the way that he will run his program in Chapel Hill, is going to see success. But I think success is relative. Are they going to be an ACC favorite entering next season and reach the college football playoff? I would say no. We showed you the win total at 7.5, and the under has the juice. But I do think for some of the reasons that people are questioning if Bill Belichick can have success in the college ranks. People were questioning if this was even an actual story when it was first reported, is why Belichick actually might be able to build the program the way that he wants. Yes, it is a new era in collegiate sports, but Bill understands that. The professional model, taking advantage of NIL resources and funding, capitalizing on the transfer portal to build your roster and thus your program. He gets that. He was a front office executive in the National Football League as well. He is not the old guard of a Nick Saban or the old guard of college basketball coaches that have bowed out in this new era. He doesn't know the old ways of college football. He has never worked in college. And there is still the idea, DRS, of organizational control that you do not find in the National Football League. Those guys are professionals. They have families. They have kids. They go home, they punch the clock, they get out of the facility. On a college campus, although players now have much more agency than ever before, you still get to dictate their schedule. You show up for practice, these are your classes, we've got meetings, you are home. That is it. And that's where I think Bill Belichick and the staff that he builds out might be able to win some football games at UNC. I could see 7-5, 8-4 in 2025 for the Heels.
Yes, and it's supposed to work because we're not taking a flyer on like, hey, this is revolutionary, Ben. A basketball coach is now the head football coach, but he's really just a CEO coach because he can handle like athletes. That's not the case here. Bill Belichick, again, is maybe the smartest human being with knowledge of football that we've ever seen. It's not going to hurt North Carolina with him coming in. It's an upgrade for Bill Belichick over Mac Brown. But the question I just have once again is the results on the field, I think, will be there. And you're right. Is it a national championship in a couple years? Maybe not, because UNC isn't that team that does it. But I just want to see this approach where you're bringing an NFL mentality to 17 and 18 years old. Like, NIL is such a wild race at this point now. You're basically telling kids before you even step on campus, here's $2 million, come here, sign on the dotted line, then we got you here and we'll see what happens. Like, are we now going to have contracts that are written up by an NFL crew that's like, you can't do this, you can't do that, you got to stay for this long? How convoluted will it be? And also, as we said again, the free market now in college football, maybe Belichick even missed by a couple years, because if there's no transfer portal, I actually would buy even more to him getting there, because once you're there, he controls you. Oh, you want to leave? Well, you can't go to any Division I school. You can only go Division II at this point. You can put ridiculous clauses on where those transfer will be. You can't do that now. So I wonder if he softens up just a little bit, which he's going to have to do. But I understand that once these kids play college football, Ben, and get to the professional ranks at 23 years old, you have the agent, you have the teams around you. They insulate you and say, okay, here's what your contract is. 17 and 18-year-olds with just a father there. Hey, I got to get a quick agent. I got to sign this. I got to get to school. I want to transfer out. Oh, no, they're going to take my money back from me now because I didn't read page 97 of my new NIL contract, which you see in the NFL, those ring binders of how much you can and can't do. That's what I'm worried about the most. Not the actual production from a coach translating to the players. It's everything around it now at this point, Ben.
And I think that's very fair, DRS. And again, you will hear that revolutionary professional type model making its way from the NFL to the semi-professional and now maybe fully professional college football ranks. But the teams that have success, the teams that are going to continue to have success year over year, their head coaches are not only program builders, but program continuers. The names of Dan Lanning, the names of even a Curt Cignetti who have come in. These are guys that understand what it takes at the collegiate level to have that culture, that organizational standard year over year. We will see if Bill Belichick has the same. It will be important the staff that he puts together. As we shared, his former colleague in New England, longtime NFL executive Michael Lombardi, is the new GM at UNC. We expect his son, Steve Belichick, to become the new defensive coordinator, an eventual successor to the throne as the head coach at North Carolina. I do just want to mention this, DRS. Steve has been the defensive coordinator at Washington this season. They allow nearly 23 points per game despite having the fifth best passing defense in the country. That points per game allowed scoring defense, 45th in the country, bottom half of teams in the Big Ten. Washington's defense last year, when they were a national runner-up, 30th in terms of efficiency. It has worked back to 45th this season. But Steve Belichick, of course, will probably be there under the purview of his father. A lot to be determined, a lot to continue discussing throughout this offseason. Very early still in December until we get to next August for UNC. That was huge news yesterday in college football, DRS. The biggest news of the day would have been this, if not for Bill Belichick. The Rich Rod return, country roads, take him home. Back to West Virginia and Morgantown. Rich Rodriguez has been named the new head coach at WVU, of course, where he spent 7 seasons from 2001 to 2007 and had unparalleled success with the Mountaineers. He is back in West Virginia, now as the new head coach starting in 2025 after spending a few years at Jacksonville State and leading the Gamecocks to a CUSA Conference Championship this past weekend.
Yeah, who says you can't go home, right? It does feel like it's a perfect match because I don't know where else West Virginia was going at this point. But get us to a couple bowl games, maybe challenge at times for a national championship, and you'll be fine.
More football headlines to round out this opening hour. Come your way now. Sometimes you can go home again. The native of West Virginia, Rich Rodriguez, back at WVU as their new head football coach when he was the head football coach for 7 years in the early 2000s, 2001 to 2007. And just one final point on Rich Rod. He had great success with the Mountaineers. After his first season, the final 6, West Virginia won at least 8 games each and every year, including in its final 3 DRS, double-digit wins every season. A victory in the Sugar Bowl over Georgia to cap off the 2005 campaign. And in his final year, number 2 West Virginia entered the backyard brawl against Pitt with a win. They were probably playing in the BCS National Championship game. Of course, we know what happened in that final one, the Panthers winning 13-9. Then he left for Michigan. Legal battle ensued over his buyout, a whole big thing. But that goes to show that even when things get bitter in your life, you can head back home if home has some meaning, and it certainly does for West Virginia and Rich Rod in Morgantown.
Absolutely. You could right. You can't go home. Like Ben started at the SportsGrid Network as an intern, left to do other things, came back now as a host. So he's happy to come back. You can. And also, I think he's getting welcomed back with open arms. Not like, oh, we had to settle on Rich Rod. I actually think this was a solid hire for West Virginia. Not like, oh, we're on our last strings. Let's go bring back like Joe Gibbs to Washington. Like they tried to revive him in the pros after so many years. Like I think this is actually a solid move as we're not really ripping this as saying, hey, look, this is a bad move for WVU. I like it.
No. Yeah, it's a really good move, DRS. He didn't have great success at Michigan. Big-time premier program. Some of the bitterness at the end of his stay in Morgantown carried over. Then he went to Arizona. Okay there at times. What he has done at Jacksonville State, and you see the evolution of the Rich Rod system, great on the ground. You remember those Morgantown teams of Pat White and Steve Sloan and what you had there. It was incredible on the ground. That will be back for West Virginia, we would assume. Some other big news in college football yesterday. Tulane's quarterback, Darian Mensah, who had entered the transfer portal after leading the Green Wave to an AAC title game appearance, will be hoping to do the same for Duke in the ACC. Manny Diaz in his first year in Durham, 9 wins, a really successful season. Darian Mensah, their new quarterback in Durham.
Yeah, no loyalty, and I don't mind it here. Ben, we've talked about this ad nauseum. Kids that have appeal on the national level should be in the portal every single year just to check out your options. And I think he did level up. Oh, Tulane was a good program. They're on the rise up. Stop it. He probably got more money from Duke, a great institution, and I'm sure he thinks it's a better fit and more money, as we like to say. Why not? Get used to it.
Garrett Nussmeier back at LSU. So many moves happening right now in the early stages of a college football offseason before the college football playoff and bowl season fully gets underway. So many moves, DRS, that we're even taking it to legislatures to figure out how to get rid of flag planting. After Ohio State lost as a 20.5-point home favorite in the shoe in their final regular season game against Michigan, to lose the game for a fourth consecutive year. And the Wolverines, of course, tried to plant the Block M in the middle of Ohio Stadium. Ohio lawmakers have said, never again. If you try to plant a flag specifically in Ohio Stadium, you are going to be in handcuffs. It would be deemed a felony. The softest move in the history of soft moves in the history of sports.
Exactly. And also, if I am a person in the legislature in Ohio, I go the opposite way and say, we're going to mandatory make it. If my Ohio State football team is this bad, I want multiple flags planted at midfield to make sure we understand the embarrassment of that and we can't have it happen again. Like, honestly, Ben, did this lawmaker actually think, like, you know what, I'm going to get so much support, they're going to love this where it's a felony, when everybody, even Ohio State, probably football players, like, no. You know how you avoid that? Just clean the clock of the team that comes in, and we'll take our own flag and plant our own flag at midfield to say, this is our house. Stop the madness out here, Ben. Come on.
Now, that would also be a felony, according to the bill.
True.
As it is worded right now, it does not state back opposing team flags. Just anybody that tries to plant any flag that has a pole with it, you could end up in jail. So know that, Tennessee Volunteers, for your college football playoff game in about just over a week. You know what the real felony is? Losing at home as a 3-touchdown favorite against your most bitter rival when you just watch them win a national championship the year prior. Ryan Day should be in
make
cuffs.
Ryan Day plant. Ryan Day should plant the flag, and then they'll arrest him. I don't think anybody's going to get mad at that right now.